Galilei was born on a cold winter morning in Pisa, Italy. His family home buzzed with life. 5 younger siblings ran through the halls. His mother, Giulia, tended a small garden in the backyard, and his father, Vincenzo, filled every room with music from his lute. From the very beginning, Galileo learned that a question could be more valuable than money. When he asked why, his parents did not shush him. Instead, they encouraged him to look for answers. As a child, Galileo watched his father tune each string of the lute. Vincenzo explained that tighter strings vibrate faster and produce higher tones, while looser strings vibrate more slowly and produce deeper notes. Galileo listened carefully, fascinated by how something as simple as a string could reveal hidden patterns. At night, he tried to recreate those vibrations with pieces of thread and discarded nails, curious to see how sound changed when he altered the tension. One afternoon, feeling bored in his math lessons, Galileo slipped away to the grand Pisa Cathedral. He found a massive chandelier hanging high above the marble floor. It swayed ever so gently in the breeze coming through the open doors. He watched it for a long time, noticing that each swing took exactly the same amount of time, whether the chandelier moved a little or a lot. "How can this happen?" he wondered. He pulled out a small notebook and held his breath, counting each swing. 1, 2, 3, never faster, never slower. That simple act of counting filled him with a sense of wonder and excitement. Back home, he shared his discovery with Giulia. She smiled and asked if he would like to test it further. Galileo tied a spoon to an old string and swung it like a miniature pendulum. He marked the time with an empty hourglass and watched as the spoon swung in perfect rhythm. From that day on, he began to record every small experiment, no matter how trivial it seemed. He wrote down drawings of pendulums, notes on timing, and single words like steady, pattern, and wonder. These sketches became the seed of his lifelong habit. Whenever something caught his curiosity, he captured it on paper. Giulia encouraged him to learn through hands-on practice. She handed him broken teacups and old glass bottles to use in his experiments. One day, while mixing water and ink to clean a spilled letter, Galileo noticed how the ink spread in swirling patterns. Instead of simply wiping it away, he traced the shapes with his finger and recorded what he saw. He realized that science often hides in everyday accidents, and that paying attention to small details could uncover big truths. When he returned to his studies, Galileo approached reading differently. He did not just read the words. He stopped at each sentence that sparked his interest and asked himself, "Do I really understand this?" He would then find a way to test the idea. If he read that heavy objects fall faster than light ones, he climbed to the top of a stone wall in their courtyard and dropped a heavy book alongside a light feather. He found that, in their sheltered courtyard, the objects fell at almost the same speed, challenging what he had learned in class. In the evenings, the family gathered around the modest garden Giulia tended. While she showed him how to prune tomato plants and save seeds, Galileo thought about how life grew from tiny kernels. He compared the steady swing of the chandelier to the gentle sway of plant branches in the breeze. He saw that patterns existed everywhere, in music, motion, and nature. By the time he was 12, his notebooks were filled with diagrams of experiments alongside sketches of the garden and the cathedral. His father often reminded him that knowledge was a gift to be shared. "When you learn something new," Vincenzo would say, "tell someone else." Galileo took this to heart. He taught his siblings how to time the pendulum's swings and showed his mother how to predict the watering schedule by watching morning dew patterns. He even invited neighbors into the courtyard to test simple experiments, delighting in their gasps when they saw surprising results. Looking back at these early sparks of curiosity, it is clear that Galileo's journey began not in a grand laboratory, but in the everyday world of family, music, and simple questions. His childhood taught him that asking why is the first step toward discovering something new. Today, you can follow his example by choosing a small object, perhaps a spoon, a leaf, or even a drop of water, observing its behavior for 5 minutes, writing 3 simple sentences in English. I observed, I wondered, and I learned. This small exercise will bring you closer to the wonder Galileo felt when he first counted the steady swings of a chandelier high above the cold marble floor of Pisa Cathedral. Galileo arrived at the University of Pisa as a young man eager to learn. The campus was filled with students carrying heavy books and bright lanterns. Galileo felt both excitement and nervousness on his first day. He walked slowly through tall stone halls, listening to professors speak about ancient ideas, yet in his heart, he wondered if the old teachings were always correct. In his early lectures, Galileo learned about Aristotle, a famous philosopher whose ideas shaped study for centuries. Aristotle said heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. Galileo listened politely, but inside he felt doubt. He remembered his own experiments in the cathedral with the chandelier and the spoon pendulum. He asked himself, does weight really make things fall faster? One afternoon, Galileo decided to test Aristotle's idea. He climbed the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa with a heavy brass ball and a lighter wooden ball. A small crowd of students and townspeople gathered around the tower's base, curious about his plan. Holding both balls side by side, Galileo counted to 3 and let them go. His heart beat fast as he watched them fall. To everyone's surprise, both balls hit the ground at nearly the same time. Galileo felt a rush of joy and relief. He had proved that weight did not change the time of falling objects. After this successful experiment, Galileo turned his attention to small inventions that could help him and others learn more. He built a simple device called a hydrostatic balance to measure how dense objects were. He filled 2 containers with water and hung an object from each side. By comparing how the objects moved, he could calculate their densities. This tool amazed his friends and his professors, who saw that it could improve many scientific tests. On a hot summer day, Galileo's mind turned to the problem of measuring temperature. He remembered how water in the courtyard had felt warm in the sun and cool in the shade. He used a thin glass tube filled with water and placed it in a small jar. As the air warmed, the water rose in the tube. When the air cooled, the water fell. He had created an early water thermometer. With simple materials, he showed that temperature could be measured in a visible way. Each time Galileo completed an experiment, he wrote clear notes and sketches in his own notebook. He used phrases like, I noticed that the brass ball and the wooden ball fell together, and I felt surprised when the water rose in the tube. These simple sentences helped him remember what he did and plan new experiments. He shared his notes with friends in quiet rooms lit by candles, saying, I wondered why the objects behaved this way, and inviting them to test his ideas. Galileo's inventions did not stay inside the university. He visited local craftsmen and explained how the hydrostatic balance could guide their work. He showed bridge builders along the Arno River how measuring material density could strengthen their arches. The engineers applied his ideas, and the bridge stood firm against spring floods. Galileo felt pride when he saw his science help solve real problems. Outside his experiments, Galileo practiced simple English phrases to explain his work. He wrote letters to scholars in other cities, using sentences like, Please try this experiment and tell me what you discover. These letters spread his ideas across Italy and beyond. Even though English was not his first language, Galileo found that simple, clear words could bring people together in the joy of discovery. Through his time at the University of Pisa, Galileo learned that science grows when we test old beliefs with new experiments. He discovered that questioning accepted ideas is not rude, but necessary for progress. His work with falling objects, the hydrostatic balance, and the water thermometer showed that careful observation and clear notes lead to real understanding. In your own studies, you can follow Galileo's example. Think of a simple belief you have heard. Find a way to test it at home, such as comparing how fast 2 coins fall or measuring temperature changes with water. Write down your results in clear English sentences beginning with, I noticed, I felt, and I wondered why. By doing so, you will continue the spirit of Galileo's first discoveries and learn to see the world with fresh curiosity. Galileo heard about a new device called the telescope in 1609, and he was eager to build his own. He spent long nights grinding and polishing pieces of glass into lenses. Each day he tested a different shape until he found one that made distant objects look larger and clearer. When his telescope was ready, he mounted it on a sturdy wooden stand in his garden and pointed it toward the sky. The first thing he saw was the moon. Through his telescope, the moon no longer looked like a smooth, perfect ball. Instead, it appeared covered in mountains, valleys, and craters. He sketched what he saw, drawing each crater and shadow carefully. He noted that as the moon moved across the sky, the shadows changed length and position. This showed him that the moon's surface was uneven, just like the Earth. Encouraged by this discovery, Galileo turned his telescope toward Jupiter. On several clear nights, he saw 4 small lights moving around the planet. At first, he thought they were stars, but as he watched, he realized they moved in regular paths around Jupiter. He named them the Medicean stars, but today we call them Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Seeing these tiny moons orbit Jupiter convinced him that not everything in the sky revolved around Earth. Galileo also observed Venus. He noticed that Venus went through phases similar to the moon's phases. Sometimes Venus appeared as a thin crescent, and at other times it looked almost full. He recorded each shape in a notebook, writing simple sentences like, I saw Venus as a crescent, and I watched it grow larger each night. These observations showed that Venus orbits the Sun, not Earth. Galileo's findings challenged the common belief that Earth was the center of the universe. He shared his discoveries in a small book called The Starry Messenger. Scholars across Europe were excited by his work, but some church leaders saw it as dangerous. They warned him not to teach that Earth moved around the sun. Galileo felt both hope and fear. He believed the evidence of his eyes and trusted his experiments. Yet he also worried about the growing opposition. In 1632, Galileo published another book, Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. He wrote it as a conversation between 3 characters discussing whether the Earth or the Sun was at the center. The lively style made the ideas clear to many readers, but it angered church authorities. In 1633, Galileo was summoned to Rome to stand trial. Under pressure, he agreed to say that Earth did not move, and he spent the rest of his life under house arrest near Florence. Even in confinement, Galileo continued to study motion and write about his ideas. His final work, Two New Sciences, explored the laws of motion and laid the foundation for modern physics. He sent copies of his book to friends and students, trusting that his ideas would spread. Galileo died in 1642, but his courage and curiosity lived on. His willingness to look through a telescope and question old beliefs changed science forever. Today, students practice his methods by observing and recording simple experiments. By looking closely at the world, asking clear questions, and writing down findings in simple English, learners follow Galileo's path of discovery and keep his legacy alive. Galileo's life teaches us the power of curiosity and the importance of asking simple questions. From his first experiments with a swinging chandelier in the Pisa Cathedral to his careful observations of the moon, Jupiter's moons, and the phases of Venus, Galileo showed that real understanding comes from seeing and testing for yourself. He challenged long-held beliefs by dropping different objects from the Leaning Tower of Pisa and by inventing new tools like the hydrostatic balance and the water thermometer. His bold work with the telescope opened a new window on the universe, revealing patterns that changed how we see our place in the solar system. Although Galileo faced strong opposition and even house arrest, he never gave up. He continued to write about the laws of motion and to share his discoveries in plain language so that everyone could learn. His final book on motion became the basis for modern physics and inspired generations of scientists. Galileo's legacy reminds us that progress often comes from simple observations, clear questions, and the courage to follow evidence, even when it challenges tradition. The lesson we can draw from Galileo's journey is that small steps often lead to big changes. In our daily lives, we can practice his method by noticing small details around us, asking why, and performing simple tests or experiments. By writing down what we see and sharing our results with others in clear, simple English, we build confidence in both our scientific thinking and our language skills. Congratulations on listening to Galileo's full story. You have improved your English listening and reading skills by following each part of his journey. Now, consider this question. Which habit of Galileo's do you find most inspiring? A. Turning curiosity into simple experiments. B. Sharing clear notes and ideas with others. Please comment on your answer, A or B, below. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to our channel to support us and keep this free content coming. We work hard to create quality lessons, but we need your help. You can also donate to help cover our costs and keep our English learning stories alive. Thank you for your support.